All right, this morning we have the Orlando Magic's very own Dante Marchitelli on the show. The Magic in the playoffs. Hey, Dante, good morning and congratulations on an amazing season.
Hey, good morning, Rich. Always good to talk to you. Yeah, well, what a year. I mean, this is unbelievable. You came in hoping, right, after last year, winning 34 games and being eliminated on the final week of the season. You enter this year thinking, man, could we grab one of those play-in spots? Could we get one of those, 7 to 10 spots and battle it out, maybe win our way into the postseason? And to sit here fifth with the playoff game later today, I mean, it's going to be awesome. We're very excited.
And the crazy thing about the way it all shaked out, I mean, you guys could have ended up as high as the 3rd seed. There were so many different scenarios that could have worked out there. You end up with the 5th seed. It was an amazing season. You get 47 wins. And speaking of the win total, I think the journey of the Magic over the last few years is pretty amazing to get to this point. And let's start with the head coach, Jamal Mosley. He's done an amazing job. In year 1, he had 22 wins. Year 2, 34 wins. This year, 47 wins. You've seen amazing growth with the team under Mosley. Talk about the coach.
Yeah, well, you start with the fact that he has increased by at least 12 wins each of the last 2 years. But, there's 47 wins. This is our 35th anniversary, and that's the 8th most in Magic history that you had 47 wins. You got very close to 50. And you're right, a couple games got away from you at the end of the year where you could have been hosting this first. You're one game away from hosting this series. But you also got some incredible wins, at a completely undermanned, at Denver, and you pull it out on the road. So you got some wins that maybe you shouldn't have got. So it all evens out at the end of the day, and you go into this one 5th. But that's the guy that set the tone. Jamal Mosley is the guy that at the beginning of training camp, and really since he first got here, is like, we're going to buy in. We're going to have a great chemistry. We're going to believe in each other. We're going to stay positive. We're going to stay optimistic. We're going to work hard. And we're all going to have defined roles. And I think that what he's really good at is, okay, this is what you need to do, Cole Anthony, for the team to be successful. But this is also what you need to do for you to be successful and for you to be able to get paid and for you to be able to capitalize. So he has the team goal in mind. This is what I need from everybody, but also not taken away from these guys in creating their opportunity and being able to get their contract and get stability with their careers as well. So I think that's a fine line to draw, and he does a great job with that. And guys buy in and they realize, okay, if I perform well, if we play well and we win, we all eat. And I think that's what these guys understand. And he keeps it light. He wants, when it's time to work, it's time to work. But he's got great relationships. He visits all these guys during the summer. So they all believe him. They all trust in him. And then he just makes great adjustments during the game. He has great game plans. He works so well with the coaching staff, and these guys know exactly what is expected of them. And I think that's you can't say enough about Jamal Mosley. That's why I think hard to not give Coach of the Year to Mark Daigneault with what the Oklahoma City Thunder did, and I certainly understand that. But I would be shocked if he's not second.
Yeah, and I would think Tom Thibodeau with the Knicks would get some consideration as well with all the injuries they had down the stretch and
sure.
Getting the second seed in the East.
But you've got 2 guys on that team that are all-stars, right? The Magic, it's one all-star, and correct, they lost Julius Randle, but they've got they're kind of an established team, and they only finished 2 games ahead of the Magic in the standings. So for all those reasons, I think Mosley's going to be right there. I really do. But you're right. Tom Thibodeau did a phenomenal job. Joe Mazzulla, best record. They ran away with this thing since December. So there's some deserving candidates. But I think if the season started, I think you're more likely to say, okay, could the Knicks be 3rd? Yeah, okay, I can see that. I don't think anybody would have thought the Magic would be 5th when the season started. So I think that's kind of more of a surprise.
No, that's a great point. And I think this journey kind of started in 2021. How about the front office? I think you can make the argument that this is one of the best run teams in the NBA right now. You made some big moves back in 2021, clearing the way, making moves with key players like Nikola Vucevic and Aaron Gordon, Evan Fournier. You get some draft capital, you clear the way for young talent. And then it's not just about having draft capital, but you got to draft the right players. That's not always easy to do. We know that. And you bring in a guy like Paolo Banchero, who I mean, the kid just looks like a superstar right now. He's the 8th player in NBA history to have over 3,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and 700 assists over his first 2 seasons. And he's the youngest player in history to lead his team in those categories. And then you also bring in guys like Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs. Just talk about the job the front office is doing here to build this team.
That's a great point. You know, that in this day and age, when you kind of set the course for the rebuild, you know, it hurts. It hurts to lose a guy like Nick Vucevic, who was a 2-time All-Star with the Magic and, you know, kind of established himself here. It was his 9th season with the Magic, and he did help this team get to the playoffs twice, once in the bubble and once against the Toronto Raptors, the eventual NBA champions. Then you have Evan Fournier, Aaron Gordon, you know, just we all remember those dunk contests, you know, that he got robbed in. There. So yeah, you got fan favorites, you got guys that you become attached to, but kind of the feeling was that maybe we've gone as far as we can go with this group, and let's see what we can get for him. Let's sell high, right? Vooch had just become an All-Star, so let's try to get as much as we can for him. And you know what was great about, you said it, the organization is so well run, and I think a great example of it is every one of those guys went to a great situation. You know, it's not like, okay, let's just get the best we can for them and send them to Washington or Charlotte, you know, a team that might struggle to win 20 games. But that's what's best for us. Let's get the best deal we can get for us, but let's also send them to a desirable situation. Aaron Gordon gets sent to Denver, wins a championship. Nick Vucevic gets sent to the Bulls, a team that was at that time 5th in the East, has DeRozan, who he played college basketball with at USC. So there's a relationship there, and, you know, a great city, and sends Evan Fournier to the Boston Celtics, who were 2nd in the East and competing for a championship. So I think that speaks volumes. You know, we want you here, and if it doesn't work out down the road, we're going to send you to a desirable situation. But then he got, you know, to get Wendell Carter Jr. and a draft pick from the Bulls that ended up being Franz Wagner. And then this past draft, you got another draft pick that you turned into Jet Howard. So who knows what he looks like. But you got 2 lottery picks, and you got Wendell Carter Jr. for Vooch. I mean, that's a terrific haul in turn for that. And then Paolo, I mean, you know, a lot of people thought it should be Chet Holmgren. A lot of people thought it should be Jabari Smith. But to take a gamble on Banchero, they just, there's something that they knew. They saw the dog in him. They saw that this guy was a dude, and they said, you know, this is the guy we got to have. And he became Rookie of the Year, became an All-Star. Just his 2nd year, you're exactly right, all the accolades. You know, his numbers that you look at, the 22, 6, and 5, he's one of 8 players in the league that are putting up those numbers. And the other 8 are top 10 players in the NBA. So we're hoping he makes 3rd-team All-NBA. We think he deserves it. Glad he was an All-Star. Then you put him and Franz together. It's just been I don't think anybody thought it would happen this soon. Still a long way to go. This is the first step of their long-term goal, but feels like, Rich, that these guys are going to be here for quite some time, and this is a sustainable method. And they got great salary cap flexibility. I mean, they can go out and sign anybody they want this summer, and I think there's only 2 or 3 teams that have more money than the Orlando Magic. So they're just in a great spot all the way around.
Oh, yeah, and it's extremely exciting and fun to watch. And it also says a lot about an organization when you can develop role players. And role players have a lot to do with being able to win and win playoff series. And you've been able to develop players like Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz and Jonathan Isaac, Mo Wagner, guys that are those pieces that could potentially help those superstars and key players in big games. How about the role players and the ability of the coaching staff and the organization to develop these guys?
Well, you said it. I mean, that's one of the strengths of this team is the depth, right? They can go 10 deep. They've been playing 10 deep the entire season. They have an entire second unit that they can go in. And then you had to go about 30 games where you had to start Goga Bitadze and also Anthony Black. Anthony Black is another lottery pick. You've got 2 lottery picks from this past draft that you can't get on the floor, right? So think about that. What does the future look like when those 2 guys are able to work themselves into the rotation as well? So that's the next step. So you had great depth, and now you've got guys that can't even crack the rotation. And that's because Mo Wagner is one of the best role players in the NBA. Cole Anthony as well. Cole Anthony just has an incredible he's just got an incredible confidence about him. When he comes in, he knows he can make shots against anyone. He's just a scorer mentality. When he came out of high school, he was the second best player in the country, in the entire nation in high school. Had 1 year at North Carolina, then the Magic grabbed him at 15. So that's a bucket getter, which is going to be huge in the playoffs when offenses break down and it's hard to score half court. defense is established, and you need those guys that can create off the dribble, and he can do that. Markelle the same way. Another guy that can get in the teeth of the defense and either finish at the rim, hit a 15-footer, or kick out to a teammate. So you've got great options there. And Mo Wagner is top 5 in the NBA in field goal percentage. He's top 3 in two-point percentage. So this is a guy that was kind of taken off the scrap heap. The Boston Celtics waived him at the end of the 2021 season. Then they bring him in, take a flyer on him, and he's got incredible energy. I don't know how many times he's won a game just on his energy. Just kind of got the second unit going, revitalized everything, and then he's playing well. He hits everything around the basket. He's learned how to score off the dribble from the free throw line. He can hit an occasional three. He rebounds for you. He's a solid defender. And then you go to Jonathan Isaac. I mean, that to me, Rich, I think is the key to this whole thing. Not Jalen Suggs as well in his perimeter defense and how much he's improved from last year, but having Jonathan Isaac healthy for the majority of the season and now going into the playoffs, knock on wood, but having him healthy going into the play, you may even start him. I mean, he started the last game of the regular season, your biggest game of the year. You have that luxury as well, but he can guard anybody 1 through 5. It's remarkable how good he is defensively. So that is an absolute game changer. And to me, Jonathan Isaac is the X factor in this whole thing in the postseason.
Oh, yeah, and that's a huge part of what the Magic are this year, a top 10 defensive team. And
yes.
I want to ask you about the fans, because that place was rocking this year. You guys definitely had a home court advantage. You had 5 of the top seven attendances in franchise history during the season, and the Magic were 17-0 against sub-500 teams at the Kia Center this year. Talk about the fans and the home court advantage you guys have.
Well, you're right, and man, you've done your work, man. That's great research, because you're right. That's been one of the biggest stories. I mean, you won 29 games at home this year too. It's one of your best home records in franchise history. And every team that you were supposed to beat, you beat, and that has not been the case for years with this team. It's so easy to have a letdown, and so easy, tough night, the second night of a back-to-back, whatever it may be. And that's the reason you're in this position. So yeah, it was frustrating to lose a couple games at the end of the season, but you didn't let anybody beat you in this building that wasn't supposed to. And I think that is huge. That's why you're 5th in the Eastern Conference, and that's why you were within striking distance of 2nd. You finished only 2 games out of 2nd. I mean, absolutely remarkable what you were able to accomplish this year. So, and the East isn't as strong as it's been in years past, and there were injuries, and the West is an absolute juggernaut. But still, you're right there in the mix, and you've beaten all the iron of the NBA, and a lot of them on your home floor. So the crowd has been fantastic. I think it started, Rich. I go back to last year when there was something brewing, right? There was a feeling that, okay, this team is only 4 or 5 games out of the play-in here in the month of March. And fans, some fans are saying, shut it down. It should be about the draft pick. Let's get the best draft pick we can get. And they didn't do that. They fought until they were mathematically eliminated, which didn't happen until the final week of the season. And I think that fight, getting that experience, playing those meaningful games, they lost a lot of them, but they were in them, and they were getting the experience, and they were kind of understanding what it means to play at the end of a season and to play for something. And everybody played. Nobody sat. You didn't rest guys. And I think that started the mentality of what we're seeing now. And that kind of gave that hunger and that desire that we saw this year. So I thought that was just an incredible decision to not go for the draft pick, to go to try to make a postseason berth and to get them that experience. That created a huge buzz in this town. All those games were sold out at the end of last season, and that just translated into this year. There's a huge buzz in town. You see it. Yeah. There's an excitement. People are wearing the gear again. There's signs in storefront windows, watch parties showing up for the playoffs here. I mean, it's just an awesome time. And this town comes alive, when the Magic are competitive and in the postseason, and we're seeing that again.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch. And I have to ask you this, because you hear this a lot in the NBA. You became a destination team, right? You never know when the next NBA superstar is going to become disgruntled and request a trade in the middle of the season. Have the Magic become that destination team to where a superstar that wants to move will say, you know what? Yeah, I'll go to Orlando, make that happen.
Oh, there's no question. I think you might have hit on something right there, because I think it's hard to go the route of free agency now. Guys kind of make their mind up, and this is where they want to go, and they talk years in advance and kind of put these things together, and those destinations are hard, but I think a guy, what you're talking about, a guy that, maybe it's not working out with the situation that he's in, and he's under contract, and he's not a threat to leave via free agency, but maybe wants to go somewhere else. We see that a lot. And I think the Magic's best opportunity is going to be via a trade. They're going to be able to take a look at the entire landscape of the NBA and say, okay, yeah, we could overpay this guy, or we could pay this guy to come here, or we have all of these assets. We have guys that can't get on the floor because there's a lot of depth there. We've got draft capital. They've got money. They're under the cap. They can work with the team that's over the cap, and they can acquire anybody. So yes, I think that is they've got so much flexibility where they can go any direction. But I think you're going to start to see that. They've got the best practice facility in the entire NBA. Built that. This is now the second year for the Advent Health Training Center. And that thing is huge, 120,000 square feet, and absolutely every amenity you could possibly ask for. And now that has started an entire arms race with all these teams trying to keep up and build an adequate practice facility, right? So that's what it is. And the way they take care of their players and help them and develop them and work with them the entire summer, yes. And then you factor what we know here, Rich, right? You're going to see the sun at some point every day. That's huge, right? You got no state income tax.
Unless
right?
there's an eclipse.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. Exactly right. But there's no state income tax, which is huge. I mean, I'm not in your tax bracket, but I know it helps me, right? To be, I know it helps me to not have the state income tax, and those guys certainly appreciate that. So I think there's a lot that this town and that this organization has going for it, where it just takes one. It just takes one guy that says, man, I might be the guy to go help Paolo and Franz and Jalen get over the hump. And then you kind of add the role players after that. Who's that guy going to be? We have no idea. But I think you're right. I think that's how they'll get it done. And I do think that this will be the next destination.
All right, and the playoffs, it is Saturday today, so this afternoon we get it started at 1 o'clock, the 4-5 matchup, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Orlando Magic, very exciting in Cleveland. Now, the season series was split 2-2. You got two top 10 defensive teams. How do you see this series going? How do the Magic stack up against how do they match up against the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of similarities between these two teams. There's a lot of length. They're defensive teams. The Magic were third in defensive rating. The Cavs were seventh. Cavs a little bit better of an offensive team, but they're about middle of the road, 16th in offensive rating. Magic are 22nd. So there's a lot of similarities there. No team allows fewer field goal attempts per game than the Magic. I mean, just a stingy defense, create turnovers, slow it down. And it's kind of honestly, though, as physical and as kind of slow and methodical as the Magic play is perfectly tailored for playoff basketball, really. And if you look at it, the Magic have kind of had to win their way in to hold on to fifth in the East for the last 2 weeks. So they've kind of been playing playoff basketball here for the last couple of weeks, and Cavs have been banged up a little bit. And hopefully, it looks like they're going to start getting healthy and start getting some bodies back. But I think it all starts with Donovan Mitchell. You got to find a way to slow him down. And if he's going to get his 30 or 35, well, then you can't let Garland get 30, and you can't let Mobley get 20, and you can't let Allen get 20 and 15. You got to limit the other guys, because sometimes Mitchell is just going to have it rolling and there's nothing you can do. But they got to make it tough. Every shot's got to be difficult. He's got to go 11 for 27 as opposed to 11 for 15. You got to find a way to slow him down. But if you look at the two games that the Magic lost against Cleveland, the game was over in the first quarter. They were down by 20 in each game in the first quarter and dug their way out, came back, made it competitive, and actually won the next three quarters. But it was bad starts that did them in. So if they can avoid that, it's been a very competitive series the entire year. And, 4-5s are going to be competitive series anyway. And there's a lot of pressure on Cleveland, as you know, Rich. I mean, there's a lot of talk there that, Mitchell might force his way out. And that's one of those guys you're talking about that might want to go to another destination. Does he want to go to New York? There's a lot of links to New York with him. So could that be an option? So they were a first round exit last year against the Knicks. So there's a lot of pressure for that organization to win, to get out of this first round so they can try to keep Mitchell happy. And if that doesn't happen and they feel, that they're struggling, it puts a lot of pressure on them. And the Magic, they're going to be playing free and loose. They're not supposed to be here. Now, they're not just happy being here. They want to win. But I don't think there's as much pressure on Orlando as there is on Cleveland.
I think you're right about that. And Cleveland, a lot of pressure. You mentioned the first round knockout last year against the Knicks. I think the key matchup in this series, something I'm looking at, and I think that the Magic will be able to out physical them. I think they're a bigger team, and during the course of the season and last year against the Knicks, height does bother the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I think one of the key matchups to look at is, you got Jalen Suggs. He's just he's extremely great defensively on the perimeter. Him against Donovan Mitchell, who may be on a bad knee right now, not 100%. I mean, we saw Jalen Suggs a week ago make Damian Lillard look like he was 50 years old. Because Suggs is so good on the perimeter defensively. I think that's the key matchup. I think Suggs is going to give Mitchell fits. I think the Magic are too big for them. They're going to out physical them. I like the Magic in this series, but how about Suggs and Mitchell? How about that matchup?
Well, I like your confidence, and I'm with you. I think we're going to feel the same way, that defensively, defense travels for home or road for a young team that's never been to the playoffs. 18 players on the roster, only 4 have ever played a playoff game, right? So this is brand new for almost all of them. But the way they defend translates, and that's going to help them going into this. And I think Isaac didn't play enough games, but between Isaac and Jalen Suggs, you've got 2 guys that are all NBA defensive teams, right? You've got 15 players that are going to make those top 3 teams, and Suggs should be on it for sure. And Jonathan just didn't play enough games, or he'd be on it. He might be the best defensive player in the entire NBA. But yes, the way Jalen defends, and listen, Gary Harris as well. Gary was sensational on Lillard also. Lillard started 1 of 11. I think he went 2 for 14 in that game that you're talking about.
Point, yep.
And that was a combination of Suggs, Harris, and Isaac at times, which is remarkable to think about that length. So maybe the length of Isaac can disrupt Donovan Mitchell a little bit too. So I think it's going to be a number of factors. Not one guy is going to be able to stop. I don't think anybody's going to be able to stop Donovan Mitchell. He's going to get the points that he's going to get, but can you make it difficult? Can you make him work? And then on the other end, Jalen's got to attack him. Whoever he's guarding has got to go at him and make him work on both ends of the floor, so he can't rest defensively. And that's going to be one of the keys to the series. Just make it difficult on him, and could he potentially wear down at the end of the game or the end of the series? Not because he's hurt, but just because he's exhausted from having to work so hard against Jalen and from having to guard him on the other end. So I think there's a lot of factors just to try to try. But yes, it's all going to revolve around Donovan Mitchell. But listen, if you put too much pressure on them, they're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the NBA. And if Dean Wade can play, I know a lot of casual basketball fans won't know that name. He's one of the best defensive bigs in the game. And so is Evan Mobley, and so is Jared Allen. Right? This is a great defensive team. Yeah. And if Dean Wade is healthy, and by all accounts he might be somewhere in this series, he's made it very hard. Him and Mobley have made it very hard on Franz and have made Paolo work really hard in that series. So they've got some great defensive players too. Got to hit shots. That is the great equalizer. You somebody's guy. It's been a struggle for this Magic team this year, especially from the perimeter, dead last in threes per game. Somebody's got to step up and make shots for this team, because their defense is going to keep them in every game. It's, are you going to be able to make enough shots? And
you have to have the clutch gene. And I think Paolo Banchero, he's shown signs of having that clutch gene. Yes. We're going to find out here in the playoffs, because these games are going to be tight at the end. And I just feel, I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge Donovan Mitchell fan. I think you saw him come up small in the playoffs last year against the Knicks. A couple years ago when he was with the Jazz against the Mavericks, people forget that first round series where Luka didn't play the first 2 games of that series, and you had Jalen Brunson leading the Mavericks and winning those first 2 games against the Mavericks against the Cleveland Cavaliers without Luka Doncic. And I just felt like Donovan Mitchell also came up small in that series. So does he have the clutch gene? I'm not so sure yet, but I think Banchero is showing signs of having that clutch gene, and we're really going to start to find out today.
Oh, no, I agree. We find out here in a couple of hours, and we're excited to see that. I think they're going to be shell-shocked when the game starts. There's a lot that comes with it. There's extra media. There's extra attention, longer timeouts. There's people in the building, celebrities and stars that you grew up watching. And so there's a lot that comes with it that I think I think it's going to take a little bit to get their footing. I think it's all going to hit them probably, and you could understand if they maybe started a little bit slow in game one. Hopefully not. Hopefully that's not the case, but you could understand it. But listen, they're ready for this. At the end of the day, this is what they have dreamt about, is this moment. And Paolo is that guy. He's second in the NBA in clutch points on the road. So what you just said is exactly right. I mean, he's one of the most clutch players in the NBA. He's got 3 game winners on the road, at Utah, at Detroit, at Chicago. Final seconds, hit the big shot on the road. So he thrives in this pressure situation. You think about it. I mean, it started with him. Coach Krzyzewski's last year, Coach K at Duke. That was Paolo's year at Duke, and every time they lost was the last game of Coach K's career. He's like, I don't know if there'll ever be more pressure than that. Whenever we lose, we're going to cost Coach K his last game. So that they played with that incredible pressure and went to the Final Four when he was at Duke. So he certainly understands that, and for some reason he just finds a way to come up big at the end of games. But Franz is right there too. He's got a couple of game winners under his belt. So Paolo has a 42-point game in Cleveland this year. He had a big game, and you're right about Donovan Mitchell. Those Utah teams, kind of always, there was more expected of them, right? But
Yep.
Joe Ingles now, ironically, is on the Magic,
Yeah.
and he was a teammate for 3 years with Donovan Mitchell out there in Utah. So he thinks incredibly highly of Donovan. But you got to go back to the bubble. I mean, that was about as good a series as I've ever seen. Denver and Utah back and forth with Mitchell and Murray. I mean, he's also capable of going the other way and averaging 40 a game in a playoff series like he did there. So it's hard to put it all squarely on Mitchell, but you're right. I think it's a big one for him to prove that he can get out of the first round. And, for all those reasons, again, all kinds of pressure, in my opinion, right, on the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Big time.
And if the Magic can steal one, if they'll, let alone get 2, but if they can steal one in Cleveland, that would be huge coming home. At the end of the day, Rich, you have not won a home playoff game in Orlando since 2011.
Wow.
Think about that.
Yeah.
2011. Team went to the finals in 2009, Eastern Conference Finals in 2010, one playoff win in 2011, and haven't had it since. So they are starved for some playoff basketball, and we're going to have it here when the team comes back to Orlando on Thursday.
Well, I'm going to say Magic in 6. I don't know if you're allowed to make predictions. What do you think?
Well, that's what I'm thinking too. I'm thinking 6. This has the capability of going 7. If everybody stays healthy and everything goes like it's capable, I feel the same way. I just think they're going to be free and loose. I think they're going to make big shots. Might struggle a little bit in game 1, but I think they're going to figure it out at some point in game 1. And I think this team is almost impossible to beat at home when they play like they're capable of playing. So I'm with you. I'm going Magic in 6 as well, but I'll take Magic in 7.
I'll take that.
I'll take that too. Just find a way. And listen, they've already won. This year has already been an incredible success, regardless of what happens here in the postseason. But man, you can create an awful lot of excitement for this organization and for all those players that you're talking about, disgruntled or free agents, looking at that and saying, "Oh man, I might be a me away from Orlando winning a championship." I think you can do a lot to help yourself here in this first round.
All right, Magic Cleveland, 1 o'clock this afternoon, round 1. Looking forward to it. Dante Marchitelli, thank you so much for being on the Rich and Mike Sports Show on WNZF this morning.
You bet, Rich. My pleasure. Let's do it again soon. Talk to you later.
All right, appreciate you. Thanks a lot.